So, meanwhile, the Democrats trying to distract from the fact that they have an awful, awful president, and they're probably going to have to run him because what is their alternative? Really? You're going to go to like Pete Buttigieg, whose main claim to fame is that he is both gay and went on paternity leave and also was a bad mayor of South Bend, Indiana? Like this is the big pitch for your next presidential candidate. Maybe Kamala Harris, who sits there. I'm so proud of you, Joe. Oh my. The visceral response of Americans, by the way, is the same as my visceral response to Kamala Harris. She is the worst politician I have ever seen. It is not particularly close. I mean, I didn't think it was possible to get any worse than many of the politicians we've seen over the past several years on right and left. And Kamala Harris has set a new bar, man. So this means they have to distract, right? They have to make it about Trump. And so they are going to talk about January 6th. January 6th this and January 6th that. So they had more of their hearings yesterday. The original big primetime special didn't do what they needed it to do, which was shift the conversation to Trump and January 6th. And so yesterday they had more hearings. And again, they've made promises that their body just can't cash. They're writing checks that they can't cash, meaning that if these hearings were to mean anything, you have to prove that Donald Trump was actually involved in a conspiracy to overthrow the United States government via a mob that stormed the Capitol. Not that he considered weird legal possibilities on January 6th. Not that he was fibbing from November 4th to January 6th or lying from November 4th to January 6th. I mean, all those things were out in public view. We all knew a lot of these things, right? These legal plans that he was putting forth about how Mike Pence could just throw out electoral votes and all the rest of this, like that was in full public view. What you actually have to show, if it's about January 6th, is that Donald Trump didn't just incentivize people to riot, or he didn't just give them a logical impetus to riot, but that he ordered them, that he coordinated with them, that he was involved in the attempt to, quote unquote, overthrow the United States government. And this is what Democrats keep claiming. So, for example, Representative Benny Thompson yesterday, he says, the mob was sent by Trump. Well, no, they weren't. And you're going to have to show evidence that they were. Because what he said in that speech was, we want you to peacefully march to the Capitol and protest. That's what he said. I know you want to pretend that he said that you should storm the Capitol and hang Mike Pence, but he didn't actually say that, which is why he was never charged with criminal incitement. And Representative Benny Thompson, they keep making claims that they can't actually justify here. And listen, none of this undermines the fact that Donald Trump's behavior on January 6th and leading up to it was egregious. But none of it is actually new. If you're going to pretend that 2022 is about 2020, then you actually have to demonstrate that 2022 and the agenda of the Republican Party has something to do with January 6th, 2021, and they've so far failed to do this. There was Benny Thompson, again, making a promise of evidence that he has yet to present.
This morning, we'll tell the story of how Donald Trump lost an election and knew he lost an election, and as a result of his loss, decided to wage an attack on our democracy, an attack on the American people by trying to rob you of your voice in our democracy, and in doing so, lit the fuse that led to the horrific violence of January 6th, when a mob of his supporters stormed the Capitol sent by Donald Trump to stop the transfer of power.
Sent by Donald Trump to stop the transfer of power is the key there, because that would actually be a criminal act. No one on the Democratic side has provided the evidence that a criminal act was actually performed on January 6th. You can talk about dereliction of duty during the hours when the riot was going on. You can talk about the lies that Donald Trump told up to January 6th. You can talk about all those things, but that's not what this committee is supposedly going to reveal to you. So instead, they're just rehashing old stuff and hoping that it distracts everybody. So they're saying that, for example, the big takeaways, according to Aaron Blake, writing for the Washington Post, he said there are 4 big takeaways from the hearings yesterday. 1, Trump was told that he lost the election, but he didn't care. Okay, well, yeah. And, I mean, like, is this supposed to be new? And we knew all of this. So they showed evidence that Bill Barr was testifying that he had told Trump that but again, so, like, Bill Barr's been very public about the fact that he told Trump that the election had been lost, at least not via voter fraud that could be proved. And this is not a shock. And so they showed film of Bill Barr ripping the Dinesh D'Souza film 2,000 Mules. Okay, so, and, I mean, he did that on my show too. Like, this is not a secret.
My opinion then and my opinion now is that the election was not stolen by fraud. And I haven't seen anything since the election that changes my mind on that, including the 2,000 Mules movie. Familiar with the 2,000?
Well, maybe you can assess that 2,000 Mules since people are talking about that.
Well, I mean, just in a nutshell, I just think the GBI was unimpressed with it. And I was similarly unimpressed with it because I think I was holding my fire on that to see what the photographic evidence was.
Okay, and listen, I went through 2,000 Mules at length. I talked with Catherine Engelbrecht, who's the person behind True the Vote, which provided all the data for 2,000 Mules. Bottom line here is that Barr is not saying anything that he hasn't already said publicly. So what exactly is the committee hoping to find here? And so according to Aaron Blake, here are the 4 takeaways. Again, takeaway number 1 is that, quote unquote, Trump was told, but he didn't care. Which, again, Trump has a unique capacity to convince himself of things that are not true. I mean, he was tweeting out that Brian Kemp just won his gubernatorial runoff with David Perdue based on voter fraud, right? Donald Trump has a unique capacity to find in his own mind things that he believes were true and then suggest that they were true. More evidence that almost everyone knew Trump had lost. Okay, again, this is not a shock. Giuliani's time in the barrel, right? So that Rudy Giuliani was advising Donald Trump. I mean, we all knew this. Like, where's the meat? I keep asking where's the meat because at a certain point, you're going to have to show it or we're not going to believe you. They brought out Jason Miller, who was heavily involved in the 2016 Trump campaign, to talk about how Trump was listening to drunk Rudy Giuliani. Again, this is not particularly shocking. I mean, did you watch Rudy Giuliani during this? He was out there with lawyers who, like Sidney Powell, suggesting that there was going to be a Kraken released, and he was standing in front of Four Seasons Lawn and Gardening instead of the Four Seasons Hotel. And like, none of this is a shock. But here's Jason Miller. This is supposed to be the shocking testimony.
Was there anyone in that conversation who, in your observation, had too much to drink?
Like Giuliani.
Tell me more about that. What was your observation about his potential intoxication during that discussion about what the president should say when he's addressed the nation on election night?
And the mayor was definitely intoxicated, but I do not know that his level of intoxication when he spoke with the president, for example.
Okay, so that was the other, and then the final big revelation from Aaron Blake from the Washington Post is that Donald Trump took in an awful lot of money between the election and January 6th, and he used very little of it for legal maneuvers, which, again, I said at the time, this is not a giant shock. Again, the fact that it's not shocking doesn't change the fact that what Trump did was wrong and wild, right? The amount of legal bills incurred did not amount to the $100 million, $250 million apparently, that Donald Trump was raising for his super PAC committee. It also happens to be that super PACs, by their very nature, have a lot of fungible cash and they can use them for whatever they want. So I don't think that Donald Trump was using that in ways that his supporters would want him to use it. Apparently, he was paying Kimberly Guilfoyle something like $60,000 for a 2-minute speech at the January 6th rally, for example. And this was one of the big revelations yesterday at the hearing. They brought out a legislative analyst named Amanda Wick, who basically laid forth what exactly Trump had done with all of this money.
The emails claimed the, quote, left-wing mob was undermining the election, implored supporters to, quote, step up to protect the integrity of the election, and encouraged them to, quote, fight back. But as the Select Committee has demonstrated, the Trump campaign knew these claims of voter fraud were false, yet they continued to barrage small-dollar donors with emails, encouraging them to donate to something called the Official Election Defense Fund. The Select Committee discovered no such fund existed.
I don't believe there is actually a fund called the Election Defense Fund.
Okay, well, the fact that there wasn't actually a fund called the Election Defense Fund doesn't mean that a super PAC couldn't give money to the election defense, right, or what they called the election defense. Okay, bottom line here is that the January 6th committee, they have provided no evidence so far that really changes the game on what we already knew about January 6th in terms of what people already understood to be happening in the lead up and during January 6th. And that really doesn't speak to 2022. So the Democrats' attempt to shift away from all of this is very unlikely to be successful. And so when Dan Pfeiffer, right, who is a former Obama official, he's over on Pod Save America now, and when he's not trying to shut down Daily Wire and claim that outlets not to his liking should be censored, he's appearing on CNN. Dan Pfeiffer, he keeps making the actual argument that the left would like to make, which is that January 6th is shorthand for what's happening right now. That dog ain't gonna hunt because that's not what's happening right now.
The story here is a months-long, wide-ranging criminal conspiracy to overturn the election. But we also have to project that forward because January 6th is a shorthand for what is happening right now. You had a Republican gubernatorial candidate in Michigan arrested in his house for participating in the insurrection. You have a Pennsylvania gubernatorial candidate who ran on the platform of giving Pennsylvania's electoral votes to Donald Trump, no matter what the voters say. This is a clear and present danger. And I think as we think about what success means for these hearings, it is focusing the mind on what is coming, not just what happened.
Okay, well, it is not focusing America's mind on that. In fact, the only thing that could focus Americans' mind back on January 6th is if Donald Trump runs again. If Donald Trump runs again, there will be a rehash. People will have to deal with this because, again, Donald Trump is very concerned about that. And herein lies the danger for Donald Trump in another presidential campaign. Donald Trump in 2016 successfully was able to channel Americans' outrage at Democratic governance and say, listen, the reason they hate me is because they hate you. And that was a very successful line because many Americans in 2016 and even in 2020 believed that that was true, that the reason they were targeting Trump is not because they particularly hated Trump, but because they hated all the people who had voted for Trump. They hated the deplorables. They hated people who didn't think like they did on social issues. They hated everybody who was not willing to kowtow to their cultural dominance. And then they voted for Donald Trump. The problem right now is that most of those Americans still feel hated by the cultural institutions, as they should. And Donald Trump is not defending them on those grounds. He's saying they hate me. It's not about they hate you and I'm standing in their way. It's they hate me, right? They stole the election from me. They're mad at me. They're targeting me. If Donald Trump makes 2024 about him, then the election will be about him and then he will be in trouble. And the way that Donald Trump, if he wants to run again, is going to have to run is by removing his ego from the picture and instead becoming the defender of the Americans that he says he is defending, rather than a defender of his own prerogative, his own ego, his own narcissism. If he does that, then I don't even know that he wins the nomination if he does that, frankly, because I think most Americans are not thinking right now, in the same way that the Democrats want you to think about 2020 and election 2020. I don't think most Americans, right or left, are thinking about that. I think they're thinking about inflation. I think they're thinking about the cultural degradation of the United States. I think they're thinking about our feckless and moreless foreign policy. I think that's what they're thinking about right now. Who's got two thumbs and wants you to like and subscribe?